The Jacksonville Jaguars have 17 impending free agents ahead of the 2026 NFL season. And on today's show, we're going to be discussing whether I think they will be back in Duval County or heading elsewhere for next season. Welcome into Jags Now, presented by Chat Sports. I'm your host, Cullen Brown. And I just want to say, first of all, thank you guys. The support that you guys have shown for this channel that's roughly a little over a month old has been incredible. And I just want to say from the bottom of my heart, thank you so much for the support. We are on our way to 2,000 subscribers here on the channel, and it would really be appreciated from me if we hit that milestone by the end of February. If you guys want to support, it's free. You can cancel at any time if you want to. All you got to do is hit that subscribe button. It would really appreciate it, and would help support the show to get more Jags videos out to you. Let's get into the first round of notable Jags free agents. And look, these first three names, I'm not going to lie, we've talked about a lot on this show, but just to fully kind of give my thoughts on all Jags free agents, we'd be remiss if we didn't discuss some of the major ones, starting with Devin Lloyd. My first initial thought when it comes to Devin Lloyd is it's going to be hard to see Devin Lloyd back in Jacksonville. I think he is somebody that, going into this past season with Anthony Campanelli, weren't really sure, how much of a role he would have in the Jaguars defense and, how effective he could be. And he turned around and had a second-team All-Pro caliber season and was one of the best linebackers of all football right after you decided not to pick up his fifth-year option and instead have him kind of have it on a prove-it-year deal, and he proved it. And now he's going to reap the benefits, whether it is with Jacksonville, which I think is kind of unlikely, or with somebody else. Because if you take a look at some of the top-paid linebackers in the National Football League, you've got guys like Fred Warner, Roquan Smith, some of the best linebackers in the National Football League getting paid, rightfully so, at top of market value. And I think that if you're Jacksonville, you hope to get Devin Lloyd somewhere between that Nick Bolton, Zach Bond range of $15 to $17 million per year. But I honestly think there's a more decent shot that Lloyd's going to potentially look to maybe even reset the linebacker market this offseason, whether it's with a team like Carolina, whether it's a team like Tampa Bay, whether it's any team that has the cap space that needs linebacker help. I think Devin Lloyd is going to be the number one target for a lot of NFL teams. And if he were to leave Jacksonville, I think that would become a major need. I mean, you've got Foye Oluokun, who is around 30 years old. He's going to be a guy you're going to be heavily relying and leaning on. And, Dennis Gardeck can play some off-ball linebacker. He's more fit to play along the edge, in my opinion. We'll talk about him more later. But if you move on from, is Jack Kaiser really going to be somebody that you potentially look to insert in this lineup? Like, I just think that if you're Jacksonville and you're at this point where you're coming off of 13 wins, you lose arguably the heart and soul of your defense in Devin Lloyd. That's going to be a major issue to address this offseason. We'll see if Jacksonville's ultimately able to re-sign Devin Lloyd. I think it's kind of unlikely, though. Getting to a guy who I think the Jaguars should prioritize, and I think hopefully they will prioritize. I don't think he'll cost overly amount in money, but Montaric Brown. If you look at the Jaguars' cornerback depth chart from this past season, the Jaguars decided to make the move to move on from Tyson Campbell in exchange for Greg Newsome. There was a lot of change in the cornerback room. Travis Hunter also went down with injury, and Montaric Brown was asked as a former 7th-round pick to really step up and be a key in the Jaguars' defense, and he delivered along with Jarian Jones, and I'd really like to bring Montaric Brown back. Now, is it going to be something that's, going to be around $8 to $10 million? Is it going to be closer to $12 or $13 million per year? I'm not sure what the case is, but he's somebody that at outside corner, you really don't have a lot of options. I mean, we'll see where, Travis Hunter, I think, is going to be primarily one of your outside guys. I would expect Greg Newsome to walk. We'll talk about more of him later, but Montaric Brown gives you kind of stability at that outside cornerback spot. I'm not saying that you can't bring some competition, whether it's through the draft or free agency, to compete with Montaric Brown, but I would be looking to bring him back if I was Jacksonville. And the final major free agent target that the Jaguars need to re-sign and keep in-house, in my opinion, is Travis Etienne, who I don't think it's even really a question. Under first-year head coach Liam Cohen had his best season as a Jacksonville Jaguar. You see your numbers on screen, 260 carries for over 1,100 yards, 4.3 yards per carry, almost 300 yards in the receiving game, 13 total touchdowns. He was somebody that, again, maybe necessarily wasn't the most efficient at times for Jacksonville, but really provided them a steady, calm presence. But it's going to be a toss-up for Travis Etienne because when you think about the Jaguars running back depth chart, they obviously took Bashal Tutin last year in the 4th round out of Virginia Tech. He is somebody that provides a dynamic, just explosive, any given play home run ability. And then LaQuint Allen gives you a lot of pros, in the pass protecting game, pass receiving game. I think he could, be a RB2 in the NFL at some point in one day. So if you're, James Gladstone, you've got all these holes on the roster that you're trying to address. is Etienne going to be back on this roster? I could see Etienne back at the right price. We're going to be, discussing some potential options, but there's a lot of free agent running backs out there. Breece Hall, Kenneth Walker, Travis Etienne, just to name a few. And I think that if Etienne's number, depending on where he wants, he did kind of give some hints that he could be looking to return to Jacksonville for next season, maybe even be open to a hometown discount if the number's right. So at the right price, I'd be looking, to bring Etienne back. I think he's somebody that obviously has chemistry with Trevor Lawrence from their days in Clemson. He obviously worked really well in Liam Cohen's offense. It's just a shame that this was his kind of final year under contract, because now you do have to make this decision ultimately where Etienne stands. I trust James Gladstone, though, to make the right decision. Okay, we talked about 3 important key free agents for the Jacksonville Jaguars. I want you guys to do me a favor. Out of all these 3, you see the numbers associated with them. 1 for Devin Lloyd, 2 for Montaric Brown, 3 for Travis Etienne. I want you to order these free agents in terms of which free agents you would bring back and you would prioritize if you were James Gladstone of the Jacksonville Jaguars. So, for example, if you want to prioritize Travis Etienne, Devin Lloyd, and then Montaric Brown, you would type 3-1-2. If you wanted to, say Devin Lloyd, Travis Etienne, Montaric Brown, 1-3-2, et cetera, et cetera. You get my point. Or if you just don't want to bring one of these guys back, you can type simply like 1-2 or whatever the case may be. Let me know which guys you want to bring back and in which order you'd want to bring these key Jaguars free agents back in Jacksonville. Speaking of offense, here's some other free agents that the Jaguars are going to have to decipher between this offseason. Dyami Brown, who he's young, 26 years old, but just didn't really, give you a lot of pop. And I think with a trade for Jakobi Meyers, he could potentially price himself out of Jacksonville, or maybe just Jacksonville looks to move on from him. I just don't see, unless he comes back maybe on a veteran minimum deal and wants to return, could see him return. Tim Patrick, who we'll talk about here in a second. DeeJay Dallas, he's kind of bounced around the league. He's a fine running back, not somebody that I'd even prioritize. Again, like if that minimum deal or if you let him walk, I don't see him really being a major factor for Jacksonville next season. Joshua Cephas, who's an exclusive rights free agent. Jacksonville could technically bring him back if they wanted to, and Cephas would just have to either sign the tender, or choose not to play next season. So ultimately, it's up to Jacksonville's decision there. And Quintin Morris is more of a depth tight end for Jacksonville. Out of these 5 names, the name that I would really prioritize if I'm James Gladstone would be Tim Patrick, who didn't have his most productive season for Jacksonville last season. 15 catches, 187 yards. Did have 3 touchdowns, 12.5 receptions. But he's a guy that's been around the league for a while. He's, 32 years old. And I think with Jacksonville, you think about your kind of top 3 to 4, with obviously Travis Hunter playing that kind of hybrid role. You've got Jakobi Meyers, who I think is going to be this team's number 1. Him and Parker Washington will kind of, in any given week, play hand-in-hand in that role. Brian Thomas Jr., the former first-round pick, and, you obviously have Travis Hunter. It's not bad to have a veteran that's just been there, can, teach the guys little things and just how to be a pro, and I think could be valuable for the Jaguars wide receiver room. So I wouldn't mind necessarily bringing Tim Patrick back. Again, it wouldn't be under anything major. Like, the most I'd probably pay for him is, 1 year, somewhere between, 3-4, up to, maybe, $8 million at most. I mean, even that's probably a stretch, probably 5 or 6. But yeah, I mean, he provides a veteran element. He's been there. He's been around locker rooms before. So if you're Liam Cohen and you value Tim Patrick's input in the receiver room, I have no problem bringing him back out of that list. So he would be my number 1 out of those group of free agents to bring back if I was Jacksonville. Moving to the defensive side of the football now, where we're discussing some kind of more veteran free agents that have been around the block a little bit and have made some impact not only with Jacksonville but also around the league in general. Emmanuel Ogbah just didn't have a lot of production for Jacksonville on the edge. I mean, honestly, Danny Strigo was the number 1 edge outside of Trayvon Walker and Josh Hines-Allen for Jacksonville for a large portion of the seasons. I would expect Emmanuel Ogbah to walk. Andrew Wingard had a really productive season, but with how much talent Jacksonville has in the secondary, and more specifically that safety room, he's probably a guy that you will either get priced out or just let walk in general. Not that he wasn't productive for you, but I just think that Jacksonville's going to move in a different direction. Greg Newsome just ultimately didn't give you the return that you were expecting from the Tyson Campbell trade. Again, it was kind of a risk because Campbell wasn't working out in Jacksonville, so you bring in Greg Newsome. You tried it. It didn't work. Ultimately, you're probably just going to let him walk for nothing. No harm, no foul. And then Dennis Gardeck, who quietly had a really productive season for Jacksonville. You see the PFF grades on screen. He's a guy that I trust more on on the defensive line and kind of rushing forward and, having his momentum towards the quarterback versus, playing in coverage, as you see kind of the low grade there at the bottom of your screen. But, have some productive years in Jacksonville. And again, looking at this linebacker depth chart for Jacksonville, Foye Oluokun, I would expect to be back. He was one of the more productive players on your defense last year. We'll see ultimately what they decide with Devin Lloyd, but if you could at least, bring Oluokun and Gardeck back, even if you lose Devin Lloyd, yes, it sucks, and, Ventrell Miller, I wouldn't expect to be the guy that they would step up right away. I would expect to bring some competition to replace Devin Lloyd at the Mike linebacker spot, but to have the Will and the Sam linebackers roles filled for 2026, I think would be a really smart move in Anthony Campanelli's second year as DC, so I'd bring him back. I think he's a really solid, underrated player that just makes a lot of winning plays, and I think he's a really good locker room guy as well. Moving on to some other defensive free agents on the defensive line for Jacksonville. We've got Austin Johnson, Dawuane Smoot, and Matt Dickerson. I think that Austin Johnson, Matt Dickerson, some defensive linemen that are aging veterans that, you'll have to make a decision on which one you'll probably bring back next season. Dawuane Smoot, just, again, old veteran. Wouldn't expect him to be back unless it's on a very cheap deal. I mean, he's been around the league, but did not have a great year last year, as you see some of the PFF numbers for these guys on screen. If I had to choose one, I'd probably bring back Matt Dickerson. He is around 30 years old. Had solid grades, 59 overall defensive grade. Really good in run defense. Could give a guy like Devon Hamilton some breathers there whenever he's in rotation, but ultimately he's not a guy you're going to break the bank for, so I would expect him out of these three to be the one guy, that you would bring back for Jacksonville. And then finally, getting into the secondary. So we do have a couple guys in Keith Taylor and Christian Braswell, who Keith Taylor is a restricted free agent. Christian Braswell is an exclusive rights free agent. And I want to make sure I get this right. So an exclusive rights free agent, which Christian Braswell is, he's somebody that has fewer than 3 accrued seasons in the National Football League. So they have to, sign the tender if Jacksonville tenders them, or they sit out the season. Whereas Keith Taylor, he has played 3 seasons in the league. Therefore, he can negotiate with other teams, but Jacksonville still holds his rights. So just a little clarification there. Both these guys are kind of some quarterback depth options for Jacksonville. I'd expect Braswell to be back. He's got that versatility to play both inside at that nickel spot and then also outside if you need him to. In a pinch, don't think he's like a day, one starter. That's somebody that you rely on for 16, 17 games. But I think somebody that's worth value and wouldn't be costing a lot if you're Jacksonville. So out of those two guys, I would pick Christian Braswell to bring back. There is the full list of all 17 names that the Jaguars free agent list. I want to ask you guys, which Jaguars free agents do you hope stay with Jacksonville in 2026? Is it just one name? Is it multiple names? Let me know down in the comment section. And again, guys, thank you guys so much for tuning in to this episode of Jags Now presented by Chat Sports. We'll be bringing you coverage all offseason long and into the 2026 NFL season. So make sure you guys hit that subscribe button. And as always, Jags fans, Duval. We'll see you next time.